Good afternoon, and welcome to the big show. The big show we do every single day. Well, we try and do most days. We're brought to you by FanDuel Casino. Obviously, we like to thank them, and of course, I'll get into it. It's Monday night, which means we'll probably have some Monday night action to talk about with FanDuel, but we'll do that a little bit later in the show. Right now, we're going to talk about your Pittsburgh Steelers' big win yesterday against the Lions. One of the things I'm going to tell you that I will start with when it comes to the Steelers is this. They seem to be a team. Mike Tomlin seems to be a coach who's starting to figure out how modern day NFL football is actually played. He's, it could be Aaron Rodgers' influence. It could be the fact that, they booed him out of the stadium a few weeks ago when they played the Bills. It could be a number of things. But for the first time, I'm watching the Steelers in a long time, probably since, the Killer Bee days. And I'm saying this is a team that actually can win games with their offense. And not just can win games with their offense, but they're willing to win games with their offense. And I know yesterday, they ran the ball well, and I know Detroit's defense is depleted and all that other stuff. But I think, honestly, everybody's pointing to, they, held Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. They held them to almost no yards, and their run defense was really great, and that's why they were – yeah, that's part of it. But here's the thing. Their offense, to me, their offense is the reason they won the game. And if you think about it, in the third quarter, the Steelers had the ball for 14 minutes and 9 seconds. Guess what? You could be the greatest show on turf. If you only have the ball for 51 seconds in a quarter, you probably ain't doing a whole lot. And so I think that's part of what, went into the way they were able to beat the Lions yesterday. The week before, they beat the Dolphins, 28-15? Last year, they would have won that game 18-15, right? I mean, that's just the way that they have always tried to play, and Mike Tomlin has tried to play these games real close to the vest and all that other stuff. And, he wants to win with his defense, and he still wants to win with his defense. But the reality is, to me, he knows he's got a Hall of Fame quarterback who's been there, has done that, has seen everything that you can see. He understands that. And as a result of understanding that, he is allowing them to play offense. That is really, to me, the most pressing and important thing about this team. Everyone wants to ask me, right, about the fact that, this team, this team is really basically, going to go and be one and done in the playoffs. I don't know that that's necessarily the case, honestly. I just don't. And I think that really, when you think about it, it's important now to know that they haven't gone into the playoffs with an offense that was really capable of winning games in a long, long time. And so when some of these games got out of control and, they started losing because the other team was scoring and they couldn't keep up, you know what? They're probably more equipped this year to do it than any year since probably back, like I said, the Killer Bee days. I mean, I know when they played the Jaguars the one year in the playoffs and the Jaguars got out to a 28-0 lead or whatever it was. I mean, the Steelers actually had an opportunity to come back into that game. It just wasn't necessarily, they ran out of time. But the reality is, it's just now time where I would tell you, you look at what they're doing this year, it's a lot more fun to watch, isn't it? It's a lot more. Interesting to watch, and there's not the inevitability of, it doesn't matter. I mean, last year when they went there, was it last year? All these years running together. I think was it last year or the year before when they went to the playoffs, and you just kind of knew, it's not going to work for them. The one year they went to the playoffs and they, played up in Buffalo with Mason Rudolph. I mean, you just kind of knew it wasn't going to happen for them. Last year, the game went down to the Ravens. You kind of knew it wasn't going to happen for them. I don't know that you can say that this year. I don't. I think this year I like their chances. For instance, say they have to play the Bills. I mean, if you play out what's going on right now and you just kind of say, okay, everybody's going to win the games they're supposed to win, which It doesn't happen that way, but humor me, just to kind of see where all these teams are going to go. I mean, the reality is, if you look at the Bills, okay, I think the Bills are probably going to go 1-1. I think they play the Eagles next, and then they play the Jets or the Dolphins or one of those teams. Let me look it up real quick. They're 11-4, right? I think they're likely to get to 12-5, even though they play both games are at home. I mean, let's assume they beat the Jets at home, and then they play the Eagles. The Eagles are good, and maybe the Bills could beat them, maybe they couldn't. But let's say legitimately they're probably going to finish 12-4. I look at the Chargers, and you know what? I'm starting to think, by the way, the Chargers are probably a better team than I gave them credit for. I mean, the Chargers are similar. They play Houston and at Denver, so they've got two tough games. I think it's entirely possible that they're going to finish 11-6. Although, like I said, they're better than I thought, so maybe not. My point is, I believe that when all of the dust settles, the Steelers will have to play probably the Bills at Acrisure Stadium in the first round of the playoffs. Just sort of looking at who plays who and what it all looks like, I feel like the Bills will be ahead of, by one game, the Texans and the Chargers. And so to me, when I look at that, I basically think, well, the biggest thing is, they are probably going to come down here. And, of course, they already won here once, and they ran the ball well that day. But the biggest thing is they were all banged up. They had all kinds of injuries. And you know what? Josh Allen is still a freak. And if it was last year's offense, last year's philosophy, 2-3 years ago, the offense, I'd tell you, you know what? They're going home. They're not going to be able to keep up with the Bills. They're not going to be able to score with the Bills in a playoff game. They're just not. This year, however, is different, and it's different because they could win a game if they had to score 31 points to win it. Now, I'm not saying that's what it necessarily would be, but when I go into a playoff game, I look at it like this. Okay, who are you playing against? You're playing against a really good offense. Let's assume they can score 28 points. You might need to score 31. Can you do it? Number of years in a row there, I've said the Steelers can't. Even Ben's last year or whatever, when he was running on empty, I was like, they can't beat the Chiefs because they can't score with the Chiefs. And I don't care how good they play defense, the Chiefs are going to score 28 points or more. I mean, they just are. And, of course, when did they score that game? 45 or something. But my point is, I go into these games and I say, can they win the game if it gets to a point where the other team's offense is cooking? For the most part, the answer has been no. This year, however, watching them play, watching Mike Tomlin go for it on fourth downs, being more aggressive, the third and one of the plays that was probably the most symbolic of how this offense is different. They got a holding call. It was like 2nd and 20. They threw a ball to DK Metcalf back shoulder for a first down. I mean, 3rd and 20 the last 2 or 3 or 4 years. 3rd and 20 has been, oh my God. I mean, I'm sorry, 1st and 20 or 2nd and 20, whatever it was. If they got a holding penalty or they got something that moved them back and made it more than 10 yards for a first down, you almost knew there was no chance they were getting a first down. You almost knew it. Now, it's kind of different, isn't it? Now, you kind of feel like, okay, if they get backed up to 2nd and 20 or whatever, they have a shot because they've got a quarterback who's smart. They've got some receivers who know what they're doing. They know how to play this game. They're smart. They're aggressive. That, to me, is what's different about this team than probably the last few years. I still don't think the defense is great. I think they made some good plays. They were resourceful at times. They did stop the run yesterday, but for the most part, I don't think they're going to be a defense that's just going to shut the other team down and make them cry like some of their old defenses have. And that tells me they're going to have to score points. And again, in years past, if they were going into a playoff game and you were telling me, well, they've got to score points, I'm telling you they're losing. They're losing. Now, hey, if they get into a game with the Bills and it takes 30 points to win, I think they can score 30 points or whatever to win. I mean, that's been part of the biggest problem that they've had, in my mind, is it's one of those things where they've given up a lot of points. And once the game started going sideways, you were kind of like, well, they can't score with this team. They just can't. I mean, if you think about it, right? Look at their playoff game. What is going on? You look at their past playoff games. Okay. Last year, they had 28 points they gave up, 31 points they gave up, 42 points they gave up, 48 to the Browns, if you remember that game, 45 to Jacksonville, 36 to New England. I mean, I don't even want to do the math on all that stuff, but to me, that probably, if I had to look at it, 36, 45, 48, 42, 31, 28, probably somewhere around 35, 36 points a game is what they're giving up in the playoffs. And, that's reality in many ways. It's reality. And I think that's the most important thing to remember. In the last three playoff games, they scored 21, 17, and 14. They did score 37 in that 48-37 loss to the Browns, but they're down 28-0, and the Browns basically were just trying to run out the clock for the rest of the game. Point I'm trying to make is they don't have the ability, I don't think. They didn't have the ability to win those kinds of games back then. But now, I think they do. And I think they have the right quarterback because he understands how to play. He understands. He's seen everything. He's experienced. He knows how to make plays. He's a guy that wants to be aggressive. He's a guy that is okay handing it off if that's what they're going to do. But to me, it feels like the right thing to do. Now then, it's just seems like one problem with the Steelers recently is there's always some stupid, silly, idiotic thing, right? And here's the breaking news for you if you're looking for it. DK Metcalf has been suspended 2 games. That's from Tom Pellisario from the NFL Network. So he's been suspended for 2 games, which means he's out until the playoffs. Okay. Here's the thing. It's right. It's the right decision. It is. He should be suspended. And I'll tell you, I really, really, really will tell you, the biggest thing with it, in my mind, is you cannot confront fans. Okay. And this idea that somehow because a fan says something that you find offensive, you can go all ham and go nuts on them. That's crazy. Absolutely crazy. I just think, that's one of the biggest problems. One of the biggest problems I have with respect to with respect to the NBA these days is these idiots can't take it when, people are heckling and they want to try and confront them and start a fight or whatever. But the reality is you cannot do it. Period. Cannot do it. And, the storyline is, he was calling him by his name or something. He was calling him by his name or something. I mean, whatever it is. And then, of course, the usual suspects started putting out all this stuff about, there was racial slurs and all this good stuff. Here's what the fan issued through his lawyer, which him getting a lawyer the day after tells you everything you need to know. He's going to sue. I'm sure he's going to get a settlement out of this. Ryan Kennedy categorically denies using the N-word, the C-word, or any racial, misogynistic, or hate-filled slur during an incident that occurred December 21st, 2025 at Ford Field during the Pittsburgh Steelers-Detroit Lions game. These allegations are completely false. At no point during or after the incident did Mr. Kennedy use racial slurs or hate speech of any kind. The claims suggesting otherwise are untrue and are not supported by video evidence, eyewitness accounts, or any reporting. Despite reports in the media last night and today, Mr. Kennedy has not used such language during interactions with Mr. Metcalf or any other players in the past. Since their false statements began circulating publicly, Mr. Kennedy has been subjected to harassment, threats, and messages advocating violence, creating serious concern for his family, for personal safety, well-being. No private individual should falsely be branded with such accusations. Mr. Kennedy is a lifelong Detroit Lions fan who has attended the game lawfully and never anticipated becoming the subject of national attention, much less false accusations of racism. He respects the game, the players, the fellow fans, and he rejects hate, discrimination in all forms. Because this matter will now likely be the subject of formal legal proceedings, Mr. Kennedy will not comment further at this time. He asks the public refrain from spreading unverified claims and report the process as the truth is addressed through appropriate legal channels. Okay, that was a very long-winded way of saying there's a very long-winded way of saying I'm going to sue the NFL, I'm going to sue the Lions or whoever's in charge of the stadium. I'm going to sue DK Metcalf. I might even sue the Steelers. That's what that lawyer basically just said. So there is just one thing. Again, the guy issued a statement basically saying, I did not use the N-word. I did not use the C word. I did not say anything about his mother. I didn't do any of that, and there's plenty of video evidence, and there's plenty of eyewitness accounts that would back me up. To me, he's going to get some money out of this. The NFL will probably settle with him or whatever. The reality is this was just a horrible look for DK Metcalf. And anybody that's sticking up for DK Metcalf is just being disingenuous and silly. Okay? There's no reason why any player should confront a fan like that. If you get to a point where the fan is saying stuff that's really truly offensive to you, first of all, grow some thicker skin. But secondly, say they're saying something that's really truly offensive to you, point them out to security and have them move them out of the stadium. But this idea that somehow there's honor in going and confronting a fan. I mean, this is some clown wearing a blue wig. Who cares? Who cares what he says? Who cares what he thinks? I think it's a horrible look for DK Metcalf, and I don't think there's any justification for any player to go into the stands and act like a fool. Even if someone throws something at you, again, there's security there, there's ushers there. Go have somebody take care of the problem. Have them arrested, have them moved out of the stadium, whatever it needs to happen. But this thing where certain players now have, starting to go into the stands and act a fool and all that other stuff, it's absolutely ridiculous to me. It really is. And I think that there's no justification for it at all. None. I mean, to be honest, if you're trying to justify what he did, you're basically just a Steeler fan. You're not dealing in reality. Because reality is you cannot, as a player, engage with the fans in that manner. You just can't. I don't think it, I can stress that enough. When I see these, numbskull NBA guys who, want to get into fights with fans and, guys like Draymond Green, who always seems to have some sort of confrontation with fans or whatever, grow some thicker skin and shut up. That's what I would tell you. It's just one of those things where, fans come to the games. They say they're whatever they got to say. But that's the society we live in today, isn't it? That's sort of the society. Everyone's a victim. Everyone's a professional victim. Everyone wants to cry about, I was offended, or I was this, or I was that. And, of course, we have a lot of people who are authority figures who basically want to give that silliness life, under some guise of, there's been a long history of, exploitation or whatever. So, anytime someone cries about being offended, we have to appease them. That's stupid. That's an idiotic way to live your life. And the bottom line is, if you're DK Metcalf, you're out there playing football, there's 50,000 or 60,000 or whatever they are, the Detroit Lion fans there, who cares? Who cares if a couple of them say something? Even I would say even if someone was saying something racially offensive, just point them out to the usher and get them out of there. That's all you got to do. There's no bravado. And to be honest, if you're DK Metcalf, you're kind of stupid because you've now opened yourself up to a lawsuit and you've gotten suspended for 2 games. So it's just one of those things where you can't be, putting yourself in dumb situations just from the standpoint of, oh, well, I'm defending myself. Well, what are you defending yourself from? Some moron in the stands who's saying stupid things? Who cares? Luckily, the Steelers are going to be okay because the bottom line is I really believe the Ravens are done. And I think the Ravens are probably going to lose on Saturday to the Packers. And if they do, it's over. The Steelers are in the playoffs. So their last 2 games, it doesn't matter. But to me, I think the biggest thing is, what if, say the Ravens won last night and, they still have Lamar Jackson healthy, then what? Now you're going to play 2 of the biggest games of the year without DK Metcalf. And that could be a problem. So again, you got to be smart. You really got to be smart. And I just think it's really dumb for any of these players to put themselves in that kind of position. I remember when I'm old enough to remember when there was, the what was it called, the brawl at the Palace or whatever that was with Ron Artest, and there were actually some people who tried to justify everything that went on there with Ron Artest, and it's like, you cannot go into the stands. I don't care what happened. You can't. And if you do, you put yourself in a lot of really bad situations. And now DK Metcalf is going to have to, he's dealing with this situation of where he's probably going to have to, deal with a lawsuit. He's probably going to have to, now obviously he's going to be suspended, and he's probably going to have to, maybe even get a fine, or actually it's 2 games without pay. So, I'm not sure what he makes per game, but I think it's 2 games without pay. But I don't know, 2 games, I guess he can appeal, but who's he going to appeal to? Yeah, of course, here we go. It just doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. I just think that it's really basically going to be really, really, really important. The thing about it is DK Metcalf maintains that he called his mother a name and he used a racial slur and all this other stuff. It's just kind of dumb. I mean, seriously, because now it's all going to come out and it's all going to come out in court, period. And the thing about it is, if there's no evidence at all, of any of these things, then DK Metcalf will look like a real idiot. By the same token, if there is evidence, then this guy who went and hired an attorney, he's probably, to me, he's going to look like a total idiot as well. So I feel like it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out. And I think that, it's just, it's an unfortunate situation that could be avoided if some of these guys had a little bit more self-control and were a little thicker skinned. I mean, again, I can't stress to you enough. If the guy actually, say he said, what DK Metcalf claims he said, okay? Let's say he said that. You still can't do what he did. You still can't do what he did. There's just no justification for it. And here's the other thing that's especially true. This guy doesn't know you. Like, I have idiots that sometimes, send me like these nasty messages and this and that or whatever. And it is what it is. Every so often I want to fire back, but I can't. I'm not allowed to. You got to, sort of, the thoughts here are basically, hey, why get into, confrontation with somebody that really doesn't mean a whole lot to you in the grand scheme of things? Why lower yourself to their level? Why get dragged into this nonsense? That's what you have to say, and that's what you have to do. So that tells me, you've got to be smart. You've got to be smart. And smarter than that. And here's the other thing. This week they're going to be going to Cleveland. Down to the Browns, to the dog pound or whatever we call it. So, I don't know. You go to Cleveland, you don't think there are going to be people that are going to be calling you names and everything else? Of course there will. I mean, that's the reality. So you're going to go into the stands and fight them all if you don't like what they have to say? That's what's so stupid about all of this. And to me, I look at it and I say, if you're DK Metcalf, you have too much to lose. That's one of the lectures I used to give to, my kids when they were in college or whatever, and Elijah, for instance, was playing for Pitt. Think about what you're doing because you have a lot to lose. And, of course, he was just a college player at the time, but he had a lot to lose. If you're DK Metcalf or any of these guys, you got a lot to lose. I mean, God forbid, he gets into this confrontation and he pulls the guy out of the stands, right? And the guy falls down and breaks his neck. Obviously, whatever. Now what? That's where you put yourself in jeopardy. So to me, I wish fans would act normal and not say stupid things, but they're going to. It's a part of it. And I think it's a part of it that some of these guys have to really come to grips with and understand. This is just a part of it, man. And so, that's where we're at with, the whole thing with DK Metcalf, at least in my mind. Sometimes it's a thing of where you have to be smarter than the other guy, period. You have to be smarter than the other guy. And if you're not, then you put yourself at risk. And once you put yourself at risk, it's just really now you're in a situation if you're DK Metcalf where you're probably going to get sued. You're going to miss games, and who knows? Maybe this guy goes and, tries to press charges. Who knows? I mean, it could be something that is really, really bad. That is just one of the things that I think most people are not thinking about if you're trying to defend what DK Metcalf did. I just don't like it. I don't like this thing of where we go into the stands these days. It just doesn't feel like that's how it's not what players should be doing. And I know that it's become a little bit more common. I don't think it's the right thing. Actually, I know it's not the right thing. You can't do that. You can't go into the stands. You just can't. And I feel like that's where, we are with this thing. But anyway, FanDuel Casino, we'd like to thank them for sponsoring us. Tonight you got the 49ers and the Colts, 49ers minus 5.5. The spread is actually now down to 4.5, which means there's money on the Colts. Over-under is 45.5. I don't know which way you want to go. Obviously, you've got Old Man Rivers playing again. We saw him play the other day. The 49ers are pretty good, obviously. One of the biggest things with them, it's on the road, and they've already clinched the playoff spot, although they're still playing for positioning and whatnot in the playoffs. The Colts are basically hanging on for dear life. And so there's a desperation factor, and you figure the Colts at home should be able to play probably a reasonably good game in many ways. But at the heart of it all, it comes down to Phillip Rivers, doesn't it? So when you're going to bet this game, that's basically what you have to look at is Phillip Rivers. So that's where we're at. Thanks to FanDuel for sponsoring us. Download the FanDuel app. Put it on your computer. Put it on your phone. You can bet on anything. that you want to bet on. You can bet on anything through your phone or through your computer. Until we do it again tomorrow, and just to sort of go back and give you the news, in case you just tuned in, DK Metcalf suspended 2 games for his going into the stands and playing, gladiator in the stands or whatever he did yesterday. He's suspended for 2 games, and that is that. Till then, we'll talk to you. Bye-bye.